Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. We are at Los Angeles at right after Kino's workshop. This is Sunday afternoon, March the 24th, and I'm really honored to have a chance to have an interview with Kino MacGregor again. Thank you very much for doing the interview.
You're welcome.
Cool. And today we are going to have a short chat about the niyamas. As you know, the niyamas are the spiritual observances that we do in our yoga practice to help us to be in a better position to get the benefits of the practice. Is that correct,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to recall, the niyamas are as follows. The first one is saucha, followed by santosha, followed by tapas, followed by swadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana. Due to the constraints of time today, we are just going to focus today on three of them, on tapas, ishvara pranidhana, and swadhyaya. So maybe we'll start with tapas. If that's okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So tapas, as I understand, literally means heat in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
And the idea is that through the practice, we build up this heat both on a physical and a spiritual level, which purifies our lives. But sometimes I think that the concern we have is that as Ashtanga practitioners especially, we might build up too much heat, and it might be damaging to ourselves on some kind of physical or psychological level. Is this a valid concern,
Well, I think that your concern is valid, but perhaps not phrased in the concept of heat. Like the internal heat as the fire of purification, I think isn't damaging. But when we obsess about various aspects of the practice, and particularly when we're working with the asana practice, the physical practice, when we try to force our body into various positions and perhaps not actually give the chance of the fire of purification the chance to actually work and open the body from the inside out, then I think we have the risk of doing injury by pushing ourselves too hard, too soon, being too attached to the end result of a particular asana. But I don't necessarily think that that is the definition of tapas, because tapas is literally translated as heat, but I don't think it's heat in that instance that creates the injury. That's more our ego that creates the injury. So another concept, which is Swami Satchidananda's translation of tapas, is the acceptance of pains which leads to purification.
Right.
So in terms of like achieving a posture, when you need to accept that it might take you a long time, maybe 10 years, a whole lifetime, maybe next lifetime to achieve the posture, you have to accept that as tapas. And then the pain is the burning of the ego.
I see.
And so I think the problem is not the cultivation of tapas or the inner fire, but is actually when the ego manifests, and then that is the obstacle. One of the interesting things that of the three of the niyamas that you chose is that those three comprise in the Yoga Sutras Kriya Yoga, which is the yoga of purification.
Right.
So when those three are taken together, we have this idea of being purified from the inside out. And I don't think that the methodology by itself is damaging or creates injury, but when we meet various obstacles to the realization of consciousness, that's when I feel like we can potentially be injured.
Yes.
So it's not the method. It's more our ego when it's exposed to the method sometimes.
I see.
Yeah.
So if I understand you correctly, you seem to be saying that if you push too hard, if you let your ego get the better of you, that ego, that pushing too hard, can actually get in the way of the tapas doing its work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Eventually, because ultimately the injury comes up, then you have to face the limitation anyway. So the yoga practice, gives you so many opportunities. Either you can face it the easy way and understand from the beginning, like let's take back bending, and if you start and you have a really stiff spine and you're really, you're not able to do deep back bends, if you take it right from the beginning, you say, I'm stiff, I'm going to have to work on this for a long time, and you don't push, and you're not like, I gotta go deep in back bend. You just say, I'm going to take the long road and really learn it properly and give my body time and space to open. Then maybe you don't have the ego to burn anyway.
I see.
Or maybe you take that on as a practice, and every day your ego hurts.
Oh, I see.
So, but if then you do the practice and then you injure yourself because you're pushing and forcing and this kind of thing, then your ego is going to have to be burned anyway.
Right.
Because then every day you wake up with the injury. You know, oh, I have this injury. How can I heal it? And then the ego burns, and then you actually, through the burning of the ego, I think, ultimately find healing in the practice, because you realize, oh, this is the alignment that will take me into healing. I'm going to go on the long road. It's going to take my time, not be injured.
So sooner or later, you're going to come out against that wall of fire, so to speak, that burns you. So it's probably wiser to let it burn sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and surrender.
Yes.
You know, surrender. That's really the key. When you meet an obstacle, surrender. You know, okay, it's there. The back is tight. Don't fight with the back. Accept it. Surrender into it.
Right.
You know, make friends with it instead of like fight against it. I'm going to open. I mean, I feel like I talk to some students who, when they meet a posture that's really challenging, they kind of go on the program of like, I'm going to solve this posture. And, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it creates injury. And if it creates injury, ultimately you learn how to approach the body in a deeper way. What I think is really beautiful about being a yoga student is the opportunity to surrender into things. Surrender into an adjustment when you're getting back. Surrender into what your journey is, you know. I guess that the way that the asana works, you could think of it a little bit like the opening of a flower. You know, so first, you know, as the plant is growing, then first you have the bud, and then the bud grows a little bit more and grows a little bit more. And, you know, it's not going to happen any faster if you get up every morning and you're like, open, I want you to grow faster. I'm going to figure out how to make you grow faster. Expediter, why aren't you open? And you yell at this, it's, you know, if anything, the plant maybe grows slower. You know? It's yelling at me. And, you know, things have their time. Sometimes, you know, surrendering to things that are outside of your control is such a big part of the yoga practice. You can't control everything. Understanding that, hey, maybe you will do this really deep back bend, but it might take you 10 years.
Yes. That reminds me of a Chinese saying. You know, the funny thing is I don't remember how to say it in Chinese anymore, but I do remember the story is this. There was a farmer who was trying to grow rice.
Right.
And so he watches the rice grow every day, and it seems to take forever. Every day, you know, it's just microscopic growth. And so one day he decides, maybe the rice will grow faster if I try pulling on the on the stalk. And of course, it doesn't work, because if you pull on a stalk, you basically injure the rice stalk, and it dies.
I think it's a little bit like that.
Yeah, I think the same thing goes on in asana practice too, right? Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting.
Let things run their course and surrender into the journey. I think it makes a very, very big difference.
Yeah. So speaking of surrender, maybe this is a good way to kind of segue into Ishvara Pranidhana, which literally is usually translated as surrender to God. But, you know, that brings up a lot of sticking points for lots of Western practitioners of yoga, because many yoga practitioners they are either not Hindus, or they don't believe in any conception of God in any personified sense.
Right.
So I guess what would you say to somebody who who wants to practice this yoga, who is passionate about it, but who has this hang up about this whole idea of surrendering to God? I mean, whatever that means. How would you? Is there a way around it?
Well, one thing that is very important to understand is that traditional yoga is a theistic philosophy. It is not, it's not agnostic, and it's not atheistic. It's a theistic philosophy. It believes in a divinity. Now, what's amazing about the yoga philosophy is it's really any form of the divine that you choose, even like a non-form form. I genuinely believe that even if you have perhaps moral issues with organized religion, the concepts of God as manifested in culture, or you have personal reservations about the notion of a personified deity or something like this, I genuinely believe that if you truly practice the methodology of yoga, you are connected through your direct experience with a source energy, you could say, that's greater than yourself. And that is what you can surrender into. And I mean, it doesn't need to be a form. It doesn't need to be Ganesh. It doesn't need to be Jesus. It doesn't need to be Buddha. It doesn't need to be anything with a name. It can be, you know, it can be like pantheistic. It can be, you know, the force of nature, the healing force of life. Whatever it is that is sacred to you is what you can surrender into. Anyone who has children, you know, can see the beauty and the perfection in the souls of their children. and any of these experiences that you have of seeing the beauty in yourself and in others, of discovering the sacred divine, is I believe part of the yoga practice. So if someone starts off with perhaps Western skepticism about organized religion, I think in many ways the yoga practice itself can heal that.
Oh.
Because it can give you a direct experience of what was the original connection into the divine. I had reservations about organized religion for a long period of time, and it's actually through the practice of yoga that I began to see the universality of religion itself and the original purpose behind it. So I think in many ways Ishvara Pranidhana is something that many Western people need, and it's actually why they're interested in yoga. They might not know it. They might not think, I'm here because I want to find God. But if you ask people, why do you keep coming back to the practice? Why do you keep doing this? People who practice more than 5 years, 10 years, practice because of the spiritual component.
Yes.
And even if they don't like the word God, it connects me to my deepest sense of self. Well, what is that? That is the God within.
Yes.
It connects me to the feeling of oneness in the universe. And surrender into that. This concept of surrender is so important for yoga students, yoga teachers, especially teachers maybe, because we need to give it up. Like, we need to let go. We spend our lives, keeping everything together and holding it together, and there's nothing more beautiful about a moment of surrender. Let it be as it is. Let the world be as it is. It is what it is. If the bud isn't open, the bud isn't open. If it's a beautiful flower, it's a beautiful flower. Not to fight anymore, to just surrender into the moment,
Yes.
What is.
Yes. On a slightly different note, I do remember that one of the things that you shared at your Unbalanced workshop yesterday was that I think you said that that you're ready to be a teacher when you can take true joy in the progress of your student. And I think your particular example was that if you meet a student who gets a jump back or a jump through that very first time he tries it, and you can take true joy in that without feeling resentful, without feeling envious, then you're ready.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh wow, I have a long way to go. Actually, that reminds. And then another different note. It's something to do with surrender as well. When I tried sharing the Ashtanga practice with some friends, one of their biggest hang-ups was in doing the opening invocation. And it could be that maybe I didn't do a very good job at explaining to them what the invocation was about. But I suspect that even if I were to try to actually translate the invocation, as you know, the invocation involves the mention of this person called Patanjali, who has 1,000 white heads and is some kind of a serpent. It is very difficult. I believe it is very difficult for somebody who is distrustful of organized religion to be persuaded to mumble this chant that refers to 1,000 white-headed serpent. I don't know. Have you, in your teaching experience, had any experiences with having to work with people who are reluctant to do the opening or closing invocation of Ashtanga?
So I think the first thing is, when you're teaching brand new people, you don't need to tell them the whole translation, just like a basic idea. This chant is a welcome into the lineage of Ashtanga Yoga, and it gives thanks to Patanjali, who's the sage who wrote the Yoga Sutras. And it's your stated intention to embark on the healing journey of yoga. That's enough for a beginner. They don't need to know more. It's just sounds, really, and just Sanskrit is a vibrational language. So even if they don't know exactly what it means, maybe it's even better, because then the sound is working, the vibration is working. So I think that's first of all. Too much information too soon for a beginner will send them running for the doors. Even Mula Bandha, you start talking about the bandhas for the squeeze your anus. You go, why are you involved in my anus? You know what I mean? So it's maybe better just to keep it simple in the beginning. The second thing is, there are people who, because of their religion, because of what they believe in terms of religion, are not really approved to do chanting. So then for those people, they can do the Om, or they can sit silently. They don't need to participate in that. If it's against their religion, it's fine. They don't chant. Some religions don't allow their members to chant. Then the third thing is that for someone who's just, say, like Western skeptical mind, who's like, yeah, the yoga's cool, what's up with that chant? I would ask you, Or I would say to them, have you ever read poetry? What's your
Yes.
favorite song? Because the lyrics of the song are a poem.
Yes.
And if you take it literally, it sounds ridiculous. If you
Indeed.
look at the great romantic poets, or you read Shakespeare literally, the meaning completely stops. So the opening mantra is a poem.
Yes.
So it's told in allegory, it's told in metaphors and similes and sort of thing. It's not told as plain, plain literate type of
Yes.
view. So when we see, the thousand petaled white lotus at the top of Patanjali's head, what it represents is the brilliance of the sun, the brilliance of the light of the awareness of Ashtanga Yoga, fully
Yes.
taking root in his mind.
Yes.
So his mind is that big. When we see Patanjali as a jungle doctor, we understand that he is the jungle doctor with the cure to the poisons of the jungle, because the jungle is in our mind.
Yes.
Our mind is the jungle. We're lost in the jungle of overgrown weeds inside of our mind, created
Yes.
by old thoughts and old habit patterns and old pains that have taken root, clouding our vision. And we have bitten the fruit off of the forbidden tree in the jungle of our mind. So we're sick, and Patanjali is the one who can cure us.
Interesting.
Right? When he's described as a serpent, that's the metaphor of the basic life energy. And the idea is metaphorical. So he's awakened that energy, and it's arisen up the spine, and that's what we're looking for. And it's the same basic image that's used in modern day medicine as the healing serpent. The serpent itself is a beautiful image, because the snake constantly renews itself. It's shedding old skin and becoming new. So
Yes.
this is the image that we're looking to shed, the old skin of pain and suffering to become new again.
Yes.
When he's described at the end as holding a conch, a discus, and a sword, the sword is the sword that's meant to cut through illusion, so you can see reality clearly.
Yes.
It's also the sword of battle, so that every day is the battle between truth and illusion, between freedom and liberation, and continuation of the cycle of suffering. Right? The discus represents the cycle of time, the itself, from which Patanjali has attained liberation. And the conch, the shell, represents victory.
Yes.
So this is metaphor, the metaphor of the evolution of the spiritual path, upon which we seek to embark upon. And at the end, we place our hands in prayer and, thanks to Patanjali. So you're basically giving thanks for the practice. And you're saying, I want to be fully liberated. I want the suffering over. I want to clear the jungle of my mind so I can see the truth of my being clearly. And Patanjali's done it, so I believe I can do it too.
Interesting. So it sounds like, I don't know if it is coincidence that you presented the three instruments, the sword, the conch, and the sword and the discus and the conch in that order.
Yeah.
Because it sounds to me like what you have to do is to cut off the root of the delusion first, and that would probably take a long time, hence the cycle of time. And conch, which represents what does it represent again? Victory, which will come when you go through that process, but that takes a long time. I know. I couldn't help thinking that was what was going on when you were relating everything. Interesting. Interesting. Well, speaking of taking a long time, one of the things that sort of that is supposed to come along as you progress and get deeper in your yoga practice is first you begin, for many people it begins as a purely physical practice, and then it becomes a sort of a spiritual practice, and then they start to go inside, and a big part of this going inside involves the process of swadhyaya or self-study. But I guess one question that I have for you is swadhyaya restricted? Is it restricted only to the study of the traditional scriptures, like say the Yoga Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita, or does it also involve the study of worldly things, like maybe even what we normally think of as intellectual knowledge or academic knowledge? Now, can that also somehow be included or maybe integrated into what we know of as swadhyaya?
That's a good question. From what I understand, one of the translations of swadhyaya is spiritual self-inquiry, and it's more a paradigm than it is a particular reading of a particular text. So, for example, just to read the Yoga Sutras is not swadhyaya. To read the Yoga Sutras as spiritual self-inquiry, as a mirror on the inner self. So you read it not to debate it, not to be, to disprove it or something like that, but you're reading the Yoga Sutras as, as a mirror with which to gaze upon the inner self. So anything that you can use as a mirror with which to gaze upon the inner self that has that paradigm could be considered swadhyaya, including, just pure meditation practice, including, perhaps modern day psychotherapy.
Oh.
But I think that in academic thought, I don't think is usually geared toward that purpose.
Indeed.
It's more, academic thought is more critical thinking.
Yes.
So this is the exact paradigm that you would actually want to avoid in swadhyaya.
Yes.
Because the critical thinking mind seeks to prove and disprove certain points and kind of looks at, it just asks different types of questions. It's not related to how does that affect me.
Yes.
And how is this a lens through which I can gaze upon my inner self? It's a different paradigm.
Yes.
So if you could use academic text or something like that through the lens of swadhyaya, then it could be potentially spiritual self-inquiry.
Right. Very interesting.
And I don't think it would have to also be traditional traditional yoga text. It could also be the Bible. It could be the Dhammapada. It could be, the Torah, any book, any spiritual book that's close to your religion or close to your faith, that you could read that, again, not to disprove it, but to use it as a lens to look within.
Right. Yeah. When I first started practicing yoga, I got the impression that yoga isn't a religion, but it does provide you a set of tools to go deeper into whatever spirituality you already believe in, whether that happens to be Christianity or Islam or whatever.
Right.
And it helps you to, in a sense, become a better Christian or better
exactly.
Muslim. I hope that is politically correct, but but that's the impression I've always been getting. Yeah, and what you just said seems to confirm what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And this is what Guruji said, you do your practice, you think you're God. Oh, any God you like. You think you're God, not my God, your God.
Yes, very interesting.
Yeah.
I was also, what you just said earlier also gives me this insight into something else. One of the concerns one of the questions that I've always been thinking about when I think about swadhyaya is how to do self-study without getting too much in your head, so to speak, and then you live in this reality that is totally cut off from everything else, which totally defeats the purpose of yoga. And I think that perhaps one problem is that many of us who are trained in the Western intellectual system, we are trained to approach things with a critical mind, and perhaps sometimes that critical mind puts us at a sort of distance, divide from what we're actually seeking to understand. And I think what you just said earlier about that paradigm actually sums it up, perfectly.
Well, I mean, there's a question of sincerity as well, because if you have this idea of that this is your lens with which you view the world, and you're always looking to deconstruct certain myths or find out the flaws or find out the how things work or why they're wrong, or this kind of thing, then is there really presence? Are you really being authentic and true? Because at some moment you can question and deconstruct an idea, but is that reality, or is that just discussion about reality? What is real? And I think that it's just very important that we are sincere. We're present and sincere and honest about how we feel. And this is so much part of part of swadhyaya as well, like being truthful as well. Like, that mirror with which you look upon your inner self gives you the ability to be truthful about who you are.
Yes.
So then you can sincerely share yourself in the world, instead of hiding behind irony, or hiding behind critical thinking, or hiding behind a veneer that keeps the world at bay.
Yes, and that happens with too many people. They use their irony or their veneer of being knowledgeable as a sort of shell. Unfortunately.
And then I mean, you can talk about how you feel and you can analyze things, but at some moment there you have to just be who you are.
Yes. Wow, a lot of food for thought. Well, we this is not a very best way to end an interview, but all good things have to come to an end, and this could probably go on forever, but who wants this to go on forever, right? So anyway, thank you so much, Kino,
Thanks,
for
Annabelle.
interviewing
Thank
with me.
you.
Actually, I hope this camera is working, because otherwise we would have wasted, no, not wasted, but spent half an hour just having a personal conversation.
Which wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, which wouldn't be bad,
Yeah.
but I hope you get to see this. So see you.